The story begins with Narcina, a young girl recalling a terrifying moment from her childhood. She had once stood frozen in fear among monsters and goblins, watching helplessly as they killed her companions and prepared to take her life. At the last moment, a hero appeared, rescuing her from the grim fate. Years later, Narcina approaches the adventurer who saved her, asking to join his group as he searches for new teammates. He agrees, and she informs him that she is skilled in martial arts. The adventurer introduces himself as Laust, a healer by trade. Before they can continue their conversation, an employee interrupts, asking Narcina if she knows who Laust really is. Narcina responds confidently that he is a healer, but the employee corrects her. Laust only knows a basic healing spell and cannot perform advanced healing magic. She explains that Laust, like many orphans of the maze, has been an adventurer since childhood, but his lack of skill has kept him from excelling. The employee continues, pointing out that Laust was once allowed to join a group called the Thunder Supporters, but was quickly kicked out. His reputation is known throughout the town, and most adventurers avoid working with him. She warns Narcina that joining Laust could lead to financial trouble, as they might not even earn enough to afford proper lodging. Unfazed, Narcina reveals her wealth, assuring the employee that money is not an issue for her. The employee cautions her once more, stating that adventurers can be ruthless, and flaunting wealth is dangerous. Narcina thanks her for the advice, but the employee, noticing her new equipment, offers to introduce her to a reputable starter team for a small commission. Narcina declines the offer, standing firm in her decision to team up with Laust. Surprised, the employee gives them a form to register as a new team, explaining that without it, they won't receive mission referrals or help with fee disputes. Laust signs the form first, and as Narcina adds her signature, she whispers, "I finally found you." The employee requests her commission, and Laust promptly pays. With that, their partnership becomes official. They shake hands, and Laust expresses his honor to be on the same team as Narcina. They begin exploring the city, with Laust explaining the mysteries of the Labyrinth of Titans. No one has fully explored the labyrinth, and many areas, along with the final boss, remain undiscovered. This has drawn adventurers from far and wide, turning the city into the largest maze city in the region. Narcina asks if they should delay their venture into the labyrinth, given the employee's recommendation to start at the Western Plains, a beginner, friendly area. Laust explains that due to the magic seeping from the labyrinth, monsters also appear in other regions, such as the forest to the north, the mountains to the east, and the wetlands to the south. The Western Plains indeed have weaker monsters, but finding them can be time-consuming. Laust proposes they head to the labyrinth, where monsters appear more frequently, and assures Narcina that they won't encounter anything too dangerous unless they delve too deeply. They make their way to the labyrinth's entrance, where Narcina insists on taking the lead since she is the martial artist, while Laust is the healer. Laust is surprised but agrees, and they enter. Inside, Laust marvels at the labyrinth's eerie atmosphere and silently wonders if Narcina's combat skills are as good as she claims. Before long, monsters emerge, and Narcina swiftly and effortlessly defeats them, impressing Laust with her prowess. After the battle, Laust picks up a magic stone and explains that adventurers sell these stones to the guild for money. Curious, Narcina asks what the guild does with the stones. Laust explains that the stones are filled with energy and have various uses, something all adventurers are expected to know. Narcina admits she wasn't the best student and asks how much the stones are worth. Laust informs her that the goblin stones they've collected aren't particularly valuable, meaning they will need to defeat stronger monsters for more profitable stones. However, what they have now should cover the cost of one night's lodging. He then asks if she's ready to go deeper into the labyrinth. Narcina agrees without hesitation, promising to protect him if danger arises. As they venture further, Laust suddenly stops Narcina before she steps onto a hidden trap. He places a stone on the ground, triggering the trap and revealing a concealed pit. Shocked, Narcina asks how he detected it. Laust explains that one of the stones looked slightly different, a subtle detail he has learned to spot through years of experience as an adventurer. Just then, they notice a large orc patrolling the area. Laust is confused, as orcs are mid-level monsters typically found on the lower floors. He warns Narcina that the orc is both powerful and agile, suggesting they combine their strength to take it down. He also offers the option to retreat if she feels unprepared. Narcina, brimming with confidence, tells Laust that if he believes they can win, she's ready to fight. Narcina charges at the orc, delivering a powerful kick to its stomach. To her surprise, the creature doesn't flinch. It counterattacks with a heavy swing, which she narrowly dodges. As the orc prepares for another strike, Laust steps in, blocking the blow with his sword and countering with a swift attack that brings the beast down. Afterward, Narcina is surprised and questions whether Laust is truly a healer. He responds by explaining that he's been an adventurer for a long time and had to learn how to fight. She teases him, remarking that his fighting skills seem far better than just survival tactics. As they continue through the labyrinth, Laust notices that Narcina's arm is injured. She brushes it off as just a scratch, but Laust insists on healing her with his magic. They come across the orc's magic stone, and Laust observes that it contains more magic than usual, meaning they can sell it for a higher price. He suggests returning to the guild, but Narcina wants to keep hunting monsters. Laust agrees, and they press deeper into the labyrinth. Later, they return to the Adventurers Guild. Amarest, the guild employee, is shocked by the number of magic stones they collected in just half a day. She scolds Laust for taking Narcina to the deeper levels of the labyrinth, but he explains that the orc was wandering near the upper floors. Narcina chimes in, saying she wanted to explore further, but Laust stopped her. Amarest mentions that there have been reports of unusual monster movements, which has been a growing concern among the officials. When Narcina inquires further, Amarest becomes nervous and claims she doesn't know anything since she's just an employee. She then asks if they want to sell all the magic stones, and they agree. Amarest eagerly prepares their payment, thrilled, because her commission increases with more sales. After receiving their payment, Amarest advises Laust to split the money evenly with Narcina. Laust is shocked to realize that half of the earnings is still 10 times more than what he usually makes. Amarest reassures them that if they ever have a dispute over money, the guild will help mediate. She also offers to handle any other issues they might have, but Laust declines, explaining that he left his old group and has no plans to rejoin. As they leave the guild, a man named Hansum watches them. He asks Amarest if Laust has joined a new team. Amarest responds that she didn't recommend Laust to any group because no one would want him. She even calls him ignorant. When Hansum inquires about the girl with Laust, Amarest reveals that her name is Narcina, the one fighting alongside him. Later, Laust and Narcina go to a restaurant. The waitress recognizes Laust and mentions that word has spread about him forming a new team. Laust dismisses the comment, saying he's more focused on food for now, but they need to book rooms first. The waitress offers them 2 rooms and informs Laust that the entire second floor is available, so they can choose any rooms they like. Afterward, they eat and then retire to their rooms. Narcina reflects on her childhood, recalling the time when Laust saved her with his magic in the forest. She thanks him silently, remembering how she decided to become an adventurer so she could form a team with him and protect him. In the present, Narcina thinks about how she trained hard for this moment. When she heard Laust had been kicked out his previous team, she rushed to the city immediately. She managed to form a team with him, and together they defeated goblins. She did all this for him, but he still doesn't recognize her. She realizes that she has grown taller. Her clothes have changed, and her hair color is different now. Meanwhile, Laust has grown so strong that he no longer needs saving. Determined, Narcina vows to keep her promise to protect him. But she feels a pang of sadness when she hears people in town calling Laust ignorant. The next day, in a swamp, a group of adventurers faced a 7-headed hydra, though 2 of its heads had already been severed. Margulis, the warrior in golden armor, stood at the front, but he looked uneasy. Armia, the sorceress beside him, was even more nervous. The rogue Siberia was too injured to fight, and Lost was busy tending to her wounds. He couldn't cure the poison, but he could restore her strength. Siberia complained that the healer was useless, which led Margulis to tell them to stop arguing and return to the battle if the healing was done. The healing wasn't finished, as Lost couldn't remove the poison. He mentioned they should have brought an antidote, but the leader had said it was too late and blamed Lost for being a worthless healer. Just then, the Hydra attacked again, aiming for Margulis, who blocked the strike with his sword and shouted for Armia to cast a spell. Armia fired a firebolt, but it barely scratched the beast. Frustrated, Margulis called his teammates useless. Unwilling to continue the mission alone, he decided to retreat, leaving his companions behind. Armia followed him, while Lost carried Siberia in his arms. The scene then flashes back to when Margulis expelled Lost from their group, Lightning Blades. Siberia accused Lost of causing their failure to defeat the Hydra, but Lost argued that maybe it was also their fault, since they stayed up all night doing nothing and weren't at their best. Margulis asked if Lost was blaming them, though that wasn't what he had meant. Siberia suggested they ask Armia whose fault it was. Nervous, the sorceress glanced at the leader, and pointing to Lost, blamed him. At that moment, Lost woke up from his dream, sweating, realizing that the memory still bothered him more than he thought. It reminded him of something that happened 6 years ago when he was known as Lost the Useless but still wanted to be a top-tier adventurer. Back then, another group had reached out to him, but they didn't want a healer, they needed Lebait. For a labyrinth orphan like Lost, this was common. What he didn't expect was that the monsters would turn on the group and wipe them out. When Lost left the dungeon, he was traumatized, never being acknowledged. On that day, he stumbled upon an overturned carriage surrounded by goblins. Amid the chaos, a defenseless girl was in danger, and without thinking, Lost rushed to help her. He never fully understood why he acted so impulsively, perhaps because he thought his life wasn't worth much. Maybe he believed trading his life to save hers would give his death meaning. During the fight, he was knocked unconscious. Hours later, he woke up next to the girl, along with knights who had rescued her and finished the battle. In the end, it wasn't Lost who saved her, he remained useless. As he reflected on this, the girl thanked him, saying that without his efforts, the knights wouldn't have arrived in time. Embarrassed, Lost healed a wound on her arm, saying that was all he could do. He explained how his former companions had thrown him to the wolves, which horrified the girl. She cried at their cruelty and vowed that when she grew up, she'd become an adventurer and form a party with him. Though Lost doubted she'd ever become an adventurer, since she was a noble's daughter, her words still inspired him. Determined, he trained hard and found a mentor, continuing as a healer but learning other adventurer skills. Eventually, he joined the Lightning Blades. Considering all of this, it made sense that Lost would dream about that event. If it hadn't been for that girl's words, he might have given up on being an adventurer and never met Narcina. Speaking of Narcina, she knocked on Lost's door just then, asking if he was awake. When he opened the door, she invited him to have breakfast with her, and the two set off to share a meal. Later, they returned to the dungeon and ventured deeper than before. Eventually, they found a teleportation circle. Lost explained that these weren't found in every labyrinth and were likely placed by a mage after the labyrinth was discovered. Narcina wondered if it could transport them to other places. Lost explained that you'd need another circle to exit, as it's a one-way trip. Narcina thought it would be easier if the city had one, but quickly realized monsters could invade the city if that happened. Lost chuckled, assuring her that monsters couldn't use these circles. He added that the knowledge to create teleportation circles had been lost for centuries, and while practical, no one knew how to make new ones anymore. With that, the pair stepped into the circle and were transported to the other side. They found themselves in a red-hued section of the dungeon, much deeper than before. Unlike the upper levels with their greenish tones, this part was tougher. Narcina, inexperienced, tried using her usual martial arts techniques against a lich, but couldn't land a hit. Leeches are spiritual beings made of pure energy, making them immune to physical attacks. Lost thinks it's best to retreat, but Narcina is determined and insists she can defeat the lich. Together, they form a plan. Lost distracts the lich, making it chase after him. So when this happens, Lost reflects on how, with enough training, people can control their prana spiritual energy within. Skilled martial artists can envelop their fists in prana, allowing them to strike down spiritual beings. Using this technique, Narcina lands a powerful punch, defeating the Lich. Though victorious, Narcina was injured during her first attempt to hit the spirit. Lost uses a special item to enhance his healing spell, thanks to a magical stone embedded in it, which amplifies the spell's power. So these magical stones are crafted into items by artisans and passed on to adventurers. After being healed, Narcina wonders how much they'll profit from the magical stone they obtained by defeating the Lich. Back at the guild, Amherst is amazed by the number of stones the duo collected and asks them to return often. As they leave the guild at night, Lost remarks on how surprised he is by the money they earned, and Narcina agrees. Suddenly, a crowd forms ahead where two men are fighting. The duo approaches, and Lost observes that disputes like this have become common, with troubled adventurers flocking to the city. This reminds Narcina of something Amherst mentioned. Lost explains it's a huge inconvenience for rule-abiding adventurers and townspeople, but he lets it go, saying it's time to celebrate their earnings with a nice drink. Their dinner is lavish, and as the plates are set, Mary, the tavern owner, asks Lost if he can pay for everything. He reassures her that he can and even orders some beer. Narcina also asks for beer, but Mary's daughter informs her they don't serve alcohol to children. Narcina is about to protest, but Lost agrees it's too soon for her to drink. As they eat, Narcina asks about a strange building in the city with no doors or windows. She's seen several and doesn't know what they're for. Lost admits he's curious too. He learned that even the workers who built them didn't know what they were for or who ordered them. The project came through several agents, making the true commissioner a mystery. Narcina comments that whoever ordered the buildings clearly didn't want to be known. Lost isn't bothered, as long as it's harmless, though he wishes they had built a wall around the city instead of these strange structures. Narcina agrees, noting the city could be vulnerable since it doesn't even have a moat, but she enjoys the open view. Lost insists it's a bad idea in times of war, as it would be easy for enemies to invade. Narcina isn't worried, saying adventurers can handle whatever threats appear, whether thieves or monsters. Later, after returning home and saying goodnight, they head to their rooms. However, Narcina briefly calls out to Lost, but then changes her mind and pretends it was nothing. As she lies in bed, she regrets not saying she wished they could share a room. Meanwhile, Lost feels content to be part of a group again. Even though he believes he'll never see the little girl who inspired him again, thanks to Narcina, he feels he can keep adventuring for a while longer. The next day, Margulis introduces the newest healer of the Lightning Blades, a girl named Lyra. She greets the group, but the other women aren't happy. Siberia avoids her, and Armia struggles to say anything. Meanwhile, the leader is overjoyed, confident they'll finally be able to defeat the Hydra. Thanks for watching my recaps. If you enjoyed it, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more anime recaps. In a dark territory surrounded by dead trees and shadows, Margulis notices that the Hydra's severed heads still haven't regrown. With this in mind, he announces that he and Lyra will lead the attack, Armia will stay back for magical support, and Siberia should sneak around to catch the enemy off guard. However, Lyra reminds him that she's a healer and shouldn't be on the front lines, which the leader finds strange because Lost, their previous healer, always did. She finds it absurd to force a healer into close combat, but Margulis explains that Lost used to charge in recklessly, sometimes landing a good hit. Siberia adds that Lost was the one who cut off the Hydra's heads. Despite this, Margulis insists Lyra stay in the rear due to her limitations, as he'll handle the front alone. Meanwhile, Lost and his partner return to the guild after another day of gathering. They trade the items they collected for money. Amherst, the receptionist, assumes they went back to the intermediate levels of the dungeon and warns them to be careful since exploring in pairs has its limits. She even suggests they recruit more members to handle bigger challenges. Lost agrees it's a good idea, but prefers to keep things as they are for now. Still, Amherst compliments their performance, saying they'll soon be able to afford renting a house with the money they've been making. Narcina doesn't quite understand, so Lost explains that groups with enough money can rent private houses and use them as their base. Amherst adds that inns have storage limits and renting a house isn't cheap, but since they're a couple, they could also use it as a love nest. Embarrassed by this, Narcina becomes furious. Lost recalls that the Lightning Blade group also rented a house, but his room was just used as storage. And Amherst reflects that they really took advantage of Lost's kindness, and in the end, it was probably for the best that he got kicked out. As night falls, Margulis seethes with anger, having failed once again to defeat the Hydra. While healing Armia, Lyra notices how eager Margulis is to face the creature head-on, despite not being strong enough. This forces the warrior to accept the harsh truth. Saberia and Margulis admit that Lost wasn't as useless as they had thought. Despite the complaints, he got the job done, and he never even realized they were paying him less than he deserved. This makes Margulis wonder why Lost left, to which the rogue reminds him that it was Margulis who kicked him out. Comically surprised, Margulis doesn't even remember doing so, but now that he knows, he figures it'll be easy to reconcile. He plans to go to the guild and ask Lost to return because no one would turn down an invitation from the famous Lightning Blade group. Hours later, Armia wakes up to find Lyra asleep beside her. Lyra had stayed by her side until she couldn't keep her eyes open any longer. Armia gently wakes Lyra, who asks how she's feeling. Armia assures her she's much better. Grateful, Lyra offers to fetch something for her to eat. When Armia agrees, Lyra goes to find the others, only to discover they had gone to the guild to invite Lost back to the group. Everyone at the guild is stunned by the proposal, while Lost tries to process what he just heard. Margulis repeats himself, and Amherst explains to Narcina that Margulis is Lost's former leader. Margulis adds that he understands why Lost hesitates to return. It's tough keeping up with a first-class adventurer like him. But there's no need to worry because Margulis will always be there to save his beloved healer if anything goes wrong. Lost responds that this isn't the issue, but Margulis assumes it's about the money. He mentions that there was a mistake in Lost's previous payments, though he's not sure how that happened. Pushing that aside, Margulis insists that their new healer is useless and it would be great if Lost rejoined the team. After hearing the offer, Lost smiles and thanks him, leading everyone to believe he's going to rejoin the Lightning Blade. Outraged, Narcina steps in front of him, determined to stop that awful man from laying a finger on her friend. After all, Lost is now her partner and is greatly valued. Lost thanks Narcina for standing up for him and explains to Margulis that he only said thank you out of politeness. He has a new group now and has no desire to leave it. Margulis urges him to reconsider, accusing Narcina of trying to exploit him and manipulate his pay. To make matters worse, he accuses the guild of being complicit and tells Lost he's being deceived. Fed up, Lost loses his patience, grabs Margulis by the wrist, and tells him he holds no grudge for the past, but if Margulis keeps accusing Narcina, he doesn't know what he'll do. After that, Lost walks away without further explanation. Furious, Margulis demands that Amherst introduce him to a new adventurer strong enough to hold the front lines. The guild employee is tired of this request, but Margulis loudly declares that the Lightning Blade will defeat the Hydra no matter what. At that moment, a man steps forward, offering his services. Margulis sizes him up and draws his sword to test the newcomer's skills. Amherst warns Margulis that the guild isn't a place for fighting, but the warrior doesn't care and rushes at the stranger. In the blink of an eye, Margulis is easily disarmed, leaving everyone in awe of the adventurer's skill. Trying to save face, Margulis shouts to the crowd that he was just going easy on the stranger but decides to recruit him anyway. Saberia asks if he's really going to trust someone who doesn't even show his face. Margulis replies that he only needs strength, nothing else. Besides, they don't have time for mistakes anymore. If they keep failing against the Hydra, rumors will spread that the Lightning Blade can't defeat it, and that will destroy the group's reputation. Margulis then asks for the recruit's name, and the stranger replies, Shig, though he stumbles as if he made it up on the spot. Later, Narcina hears a knock at the door. She checks to find Sheila, the innkeeper's daughter, at Lost's room. For a moment, Narcina feels suspicious, but convinces herself that Sheila wouldn't deceive her. Lost shows up, and Sheila tells them they have visitors. The two head downstairs and meet Lyra and Armia at one of the tables. Armia quickly apologizes, acknowledging that this isn't something she should be discussing with Lost, but she really needs help. Lyra explains that Margulis has hired a new warrior and is going after the Hydra again. Armia adds that she now realizes how strong Lost was, because if he hadn't cut off some of the Hydra's heads, the whole team would have been wiped out. She asks Lost to join them again to finish the Hydra off once and for all. Faced with this new request, Lost guesses Armia doesn't know that Margulis made the same offer earlier. Narcina questions why Armia wants to help this group, considering how hard it must be dealing with Margulis. Armia admits Margulis is authoritarian, impulsive, cowardly, rude, stubborn, vengeful, greedy, and never brushes his teeth. But despite all that, he's still her companion. At this, Narcina slams her hand on the table, asking why Armia let Lost be mistreated in the group without doing anything. Armia confesses she was too scared to stand up to Margulis and Saberia, as she was the one who wrongly accused Lost of causing their defeat. As she remembers this, Armia starts to cry, explaining that she's new to adventuring and didn't understand what she was doing. She now realizes Margulis was wrong, but she still can't turn her back on a companion. Just then, Mary arrives with a feast, insisting Armia looks too pale and can't leave with a sad face. As Armia eats, Narcina asks if she could take the mage out of the group with her, but Armia replies that if she could, she wouldn't still be with them. Lyra adds that Armia is a kind person, though Lost recalls Margulis calling her useless. He remarks that Lyra too will struggle with the group. Despite this, Lyra says she can't leave Armia behind, and Lost understands. Later, Lyra returns home and runs into the new recruit of the Lightning Blade. She calls him Sieg, but Margulis corrects her, saying his name is Shay. With no more time for delays, Margulis gathers the team for another attempt against the Hydra. Lyra confronts Sieg, asking what he's doing there. Sieg pretends not to know her, but as he turns, she recognizes Ronaldo's sword. She asks if it was stolen. Nervously, Sieg claims he inherited it from his mentor, but realizing he said too much, he denies ever hearing of Ronaldo. Meanwhile, Lost and Narcina set off on another journey. At the same time, the Lightning Blade heads out, with Margulis more confident than ever as they march into Hydra territory. We then see Marcina face a group of large, muscular orcs armed with heavy clubs. Using her fighting skills, she only needs her own strength to defeat these opponents, each one over 3 times her size. After taking down the orcs, Lost asks Marcina if she wants to rest, but she appears ready to keep going. Just then, her stomach rumbles, making the healer laugh as he teases that even the tireless Marcina gets hungry. With that, he invites her to join him for lunch. Soon, when the food is prepared, Lost is stunned by the amount they have. Marcina explains that Mary from the inn noticed she hadn't eaten anything and packed this feast for her. As they eat, the healer mentions the Hydra, a highly venomous creature with a muscular body and scales that resist both physical and magical attacks. Hearing this, Marcina looks worried and asks about the Hydra's whereabouts. Lost explains that although they're not found everywhere, they're fairly common compared to even stronger monsters. He mentions that research has led to some effective strategies against them, like an antidote for their venom, which is fatal without treatment. The antidote is available in Marnat, though it isn't cheap, so many groups rely on support healers. For the Blade of Lightning team, Lyra will carefully monitor the group. Lost assures Marcina that, although Margulis often brags, he is a skilled swordsman who can be formidable if he stays in shape and takes the opponent seriously. Siberia is also highly skilled in speed and agility. Since the Hydra has multiple heads with a wide field of vision, Siberia might still manage to sneak around and attack from behind. Hearing this, Marcina comments that Lost seems full of praise for Blade of Lightning. Lost, slightly embarrassed, replies that he's only stating the facts. Marcina lets it go and changes the subject, mentioning that they always go to the same labyrinth, which is becoming tiring. Lost asks if she'd like to try somewhere different, and she suggests they check out the nearby swamps. Meanwhile, Blade of Lightning confronts the Hydra. Margulis lands a powerful blow on one of its necks, and then C steps in, cutting off another head. When it's time to strike a second head, C hesitates, and Margulis accuses him of holding back to let the leader get credit as a Hydra slayer. Laughing arrogantly, Margulis charges at the Hydra, but nearly gets hit in the process. While healing Siberia, Lyra questions Margulis' reckless approach, but Siberia just says that it's all part of the night's thrill. Lyra shrugs off the answer, heals her partner, and Siberia jumps back into the fight. The healer, observing the fight, notes that C's earlier attacks have already weakened the Hydra, making it move more slowly. Siberia distracts the Hydra, allowing Margulis to keep striking, and Armia supports them with her spells. At this pace, they're confident the Hydra will be defeated. Suddenly, the Hydra throws a rock at Armia, knocking her down and making her vulnerable. One of the Hydra's heads approaches her, and the fear she feels releases an unusual substance that confuses Siberia. Seed explains that monsters can absorb a person's fear and transform it into energy. C is surprised since this fear is usually invisible. Lara touches the energy in the air and senses it is mana, a force normally found only deep within a labyrinth. As the Hydra absorbs this mana, it begins mutating, as monsters are capable of transforming themselves by absorbing large amounts of mana. In response, Seed tells Lyra to look after Armia and calls Margulis to retreat. Margulis protests, eager to continue and earn the title of Hydra Slayer. But as he strikes, his weapon breaks, leaving him defenseless. The Hydra attacks, but Lost arrives in time to save him. Seeing the healer's arrival, C asks Lost to care for Armia. When Lost reaches her, he asks Lyra about her condition. Lyra explains that as a sorceress, Armia has high resistance to magic, so healing spells may not work well on her. Lost takes charge and casts multiple healing spells one after the other, a technique he used during his time with Blade of Lightning. Lyra, surprised, remarks that this approach is like treating a cold with too much medicine. Yet, Armia begins to regain consciousness, though she's not yet ready to fight. Then, Sieg warns that the Hydra appears to be focused on Lost. The healer explains that it likely remembers him from past encounters. Marcina volunteers to help, and Lost agrees but reminds her to back off if it becomes too dangerous. At the same time, Sieg suggested that the rest of Blade of Lightning stay out of the fight, and everyone agreed, especially since Margulis was now unarmed due to his broken sword. So Lost and Narcina attacked the Hydra together, showing a strength Margulis never knew his former teammate had. The warrior was puzzled about why Sieg's sword didn't break. Lara explained that Sieg's weapon was magical, a legendary sword with immense power. Margulis thought such equipment was only a myth, but if it were real, he wondered how Sieg managed to wield it. Meanwhile, Narcina kept up her attacks on the Hydra, but was eventually struck and taken hostage. Lost deduced that the Hydra wanted a one-on-one fight. Narcina couldn't understand how a monster could be this intelligent. Lara explained that creatures that mutate can develop both higher intelligence and cruelty. With that, Lost ordered everyone to stay back and charged at his massive opponent. At that moment, a man far away observed the flame of a candle flicker, wrote something on a piece of paper, and closed his eyes. This caused Lost to suddenly collapse. Lost tried to get up to help his fallen friend, but quickly lost consciousness. Moments later, he awoke with powerful energy flowing through his body. The man who caused this reaction wondered aloud about something that should have stayed dormant. Then, a horn appeared on Lost's forehead. The Hydra charged at him, but Lost instantly reacted, slicing off all the creature's heads in a single blow, ending the fight. Exhausted, Lost collapsed again. When he woke up, he asked about Narcina's condition, and she reassured him, explaining that Lyra had given her an antidote. Lyra made sure to mention it was quite expensive, so she expected reimbursement. Narcina then questioned Lost about his strange transformation, but he had no idea what she was talking about. Margulis, feigning admiration, declared he always knew how remarkable Lost was, and that with him, they could defeat even the most challenging monsters, including the master of Mardet Labyrinth. He then promised to split the Hydra's magic stones among 3 people. Confused, the healer asked why only 3, and Margulis explained that it would go to him, Lost, and Siberia since the rookies hadn't contributed much and would have their pay docked. He added that the young woman who came with the healer was only an assistant and wouldn't receive anything. When Lost inquired about Armia, Siberia coldly responded that Armia was gone, as they weren't even sure she'd ever wake up, let alone be useful as a mage. Margulis suggested they could sell her, remarking that she was attractive and would appeal to certain buyers. Without hesitation, Narcina punched Margulis, who began threatening to expel her from the guild, citing rules against fighting among adventurers. However, Steve and Larara claimed they hadn't seen anything, shutting down his argument. Siberia, however, said she'd seen it and would testify for the leader. Steve quickly changed his stance, admitting he'd heard Margulis discuss selling their teammate on the black market. As a guild representative, he ordered everyone to follow him. Back in the city, everyone learned that C was a royal adventurer sent by the Adventurers Guild to investigate due to safety issues in the area. During his investigation of Blade of Lightning, he discovered their actions and decided they would be expelled from the guild. Due to the human trafficking threat, they were sentenced to forced labor for life. As Margulis and Siberia panicked, Lost called C aside to talk. Outside, he asked the representative to show mercy, believing that, although Margulis and Siberia were now motivated by fame and wealth, they hadn't always been that way. He hoped they could have a second chance to change. Hearing this, Seed ordered Margulis and Siberia to go to the farthest city they could find and never return. The pair quickly agreed and left before he could change his mind. Amber asked if that was the right decision, and he replied that he'd stay in Mardet to keep an eye on them. Narcina felt guilty about causing their exile, but Lost reassured her that it was the best choice. He thanked her for all her help and told her he looked forward to more of their adventures together. Later, Seed and Lyra discussed the importance of watching the Marduk Guild since the royal city suspected the issues there might be related to the local branch or its master. He asked her group, the Helioformal, to assist in this task. Lyra agreed, as long as Armia was included since she couldn't abandon the young mage. Seed readily agreed, feeling that he, too, wanted to stay close to Lost and these promising young adventurers. If you enjoyed this, drop a comment and subscribe for more. The story continues with everyone gathered for a meal, enjoying the sense of camaraderie within their team, which includes a warrior, a sorceress, and a healer. Their group is already well balanced, and soon Ermia, a beautiful girl with no place else to go, joins them. Grateful to them for saving her, she feels indebted. They reassure her, saying that they would be happy for her even if she chose to leave. However, she insists on staying with them, eager to become strong and make new friends. The scene then shifts to Larsina talking with Lost about what they should do for the day. She suggests going to the labyrinth, plains, or wetlands, but he surprises her by saying he wants to go to the guild first. Larsina, confused, reminds him that they don't usually visit the guild in the morning. Lost explains that they were so busy yesterday they forgot to exchange some Hydra materials for money. He also mentions that he's considering taking on a quest. She agrees, noting that quests are essential for income and involve hunting monsters, gathering items, or serving as a guard, though it requires training and experience. Lost assures her he's willing to do all of this for her. Overwhelmed, she looks at him with emotion and nearly tears up. He notices her stare and asks why she's looking at him that way. Embarrassed, she quickly says it's nothing and suggests they head to the guild. After a half-hour walk, they arrive but are surprised to find people staring at them curiously. Lost realizes the reason and pulls Larsina aside, warning her to be cautious. Rumors about their defeat of the Hydra have spread, and dark sorcerers may try to steal the magic stone by any means. Just then, a man named Marnil approaches them, greeting Lost and requesting a private conversation. Lost recognizes him, so he sends the others away. As they sit, Marnil begins to talk about the Hydra and then does something unusual, apologizing to Lost, which confuses him. When asked what he's apologizing for, Marnil explains it's for not stepping in earlier regarding Margolis, a scoundrel who had given Lost's team trouble. He admits that everyone knew of Margolis' bad intentions but chose not to interfere, and some even insulted Lost behind his back, calling him ignorant. Though Marnil himself didn't directly harm Lost, he recognizes his fault. Larsina, upset, tells Marnil that if he truly seeks forgiveness, he should apologize to Lost for 3 days and nights. Taken aback, Marnil laughs at her request, but she firmly states that 3 days is nothing compared to the hardships Lost has endured. Lost, however, gently tells her to stop, as he doesn't want to seem arrogant or give the impression of demanding apologies. He humbly accepts the title of ignorant, acknowledging he's just a healer with basic spells. Marnil shakes Lost's hand, promising his support if Lost ever needs it. Afterward, Lost approaches the guild girl and hands her the Hydra's magic stone, which shocks her due to its rarity and high value. She remarks that this stone could fetch a price 10 times higher than usual. She also shares news of strange occurrences in the wetlands, noting that while it's possible for magic to leak from the labyrinth, it rarely causes large-scale transformations. They've encountered high-level orcs recently, suggesting that something might be wrong within the labyrinth. At that moment, Mr. Hanzim arrives, noticing their conversation. He asks them bluntly what they're whispering about. The guild girl explains there's a minor issue that needs attention. Hanzim, appearing annoyed, listens to their report and learns that mid-level monsters are moving into high-level areas and that unusual transformations are happening outside the labyrinth. Though he acknowledges that these are uncommon events, he dismisses them as minor issues that don't warrant the guild's constant intervention. Lost, concerned, warns that if they ignore this, adventurers could get hurt or worse. Hanzim counters, stating that all adventurers understand the risks they face. He suggests the guild should simply issue a warning, informing adventurers of the current dangers. Addressing Lost directly, he mockingly tells him that if he's so frightened, he should consider leaving town. After leaving, Larsina was still fuming about Hanzim's attitude. She expressed frustration, saying she couldn't understand his problem or why he spoke to Lost that way. Lost reminded her that they had at least tried to speak with Hanzim and acknowledged that he was probably right about the guild being overwhelmed with tasks. Larsina insisted that it wasn't about the workload, but about how Hanzim had treated Lost, questioning why he would tell him to leave the town and wondering who Hanzim thought he was to speak like that. At that point, a guild employee joined the conversation, explaining that Hanzim was simply like that by nature. She also mentioned that Mr. Mist, the head of the guild, was present in the building, which surprised Lost since he had never met him. The employee added that very few people ever saw Mr. Mist, which only heightened Lost and Larsina's curiosity. She then explained that Mr. Mist was quite old and confined to his office most of the time. As a result, Hanzim had taken on the responsibility of managing the guild branch, though he tended to be harsh on mistakes, causing the staff to fear him. Lost then asked the employee for a list of available quests. She presented a few current missions, including gathering medicinal herbs and locating lost adventurers. Narcina expressed her desire to go hunting in a lake within the labyrinth, planning to recruit 2 guards for the job, dismissing the other missions as trivial. The employee reminded her that all tasks were worthwhile as long as they paid, but agreed it was up to them to decide which ones to accept. Lost found a quest involving the defeat of monsters, which Narcina declared was exactly what she was looking for. The employee warned them about this mission, explaining that a phoenix had nested near a teleportation circle in the mid-levels, and a bounty had been placed on it. Although the rewards would be significant, she cautioned that facing a phoenix, especially without ranged attacks, would be extremely dangerous. Lost recognized the challenge of battling a flying creature with limited means of attacking from a distance. The employee explained that they would need a sorcerer and a warrior to complete the mission, along with a healer who could perform wide-range spells to support the entire group. Lost approached Sieg and Lyra for assistance. Lyra agreed immediately, whispering to Sieg that working with Lost would make it easier to keep an eye on him. They then asked Armia for her input, and she agreed to join, as long as that was what the group wanted. Lost welcomed her enthusiastically, surprising her since she hadn't always been kind to him before. He assured her that he knew she wouldn't act that way again, and informed the group that they would set off the next morning. Later, Lost went shopping with Narcina, Armia, and Lyra. As they browsed the market and split up to gather supplies, Narcina asked where they were going next. Lost told her they were heading to the apothecary, explaining that medicines could aid healing faster than relying solely on spells. Impressed, Narcina commented on how much he seemed to know, to which Lost replied that it was part of his role as a healer. Narcina, however, wasn't only referring to his medical knowledge and began to look thoughtful. Suddenly, someone grabbed Narcina's arm, shouting, "I found you." She turned, shocked to see Ralma. Instead of a warm greeting, Narcina punched her, demanding to know why she'd startled her instead of saying hello. Ralma explained that she hadn't seen Narcina in years, and Narcina admitted she was caught off guard by the sudden contact. Narcina asked what Ralma was doing here, to which Ralma responded that as a high-level sorceress and adventurer with fire-wielding abilities, it wasn't unusual for her to visit a labyrinth city. Narcina then realized Ralma's visit had something to do with her parents. Ralma confirmed, explaining that Narcina's father had asked her to check up on her after she had left home in a hurry. Lost observed their reunion in surprise, commenting that he was glad to see Ralma again. They all went to a restaurant, and Lost revealed that he had once studied briefly under her. Ralma reminded him that he'd been a rather weak student, which made Narcina curious about their connection. Narcina then explained that Ralma was an old friend of her father's, though she hadn't known that Ralma was also Lost's teacher. Ralma then addressed Lost and asked him to leave, saying she and Narcina would be discussing matters concerning the Nair family. Lost responded that he couldn't leave as he was part of Narcina's team and therefore not an outsider to her. He also suspected Ralma was sent to bring Narcina home, which made him wary. Ralma summoned her magic in a brief display of power, which Lost skillfully dodged, impressing her. She conceded and allowed him to stay. Narcina then explained to Ralma that she hadn't exactly run away. She had left a letter explaining she'd be with her big brother and that there was no need to worry. Ralma raised an eyebrow at her explanation, pointing out that her father might not find that reassuring. She pressed her for the real reason she left. Narcina, now somber, admitted that she left because she couldn't express her feelings to her big brother and felt compelled to help him when she heard he was dismissed from the Lightning Blades. Lost gently suggested that returning home first might be best, as she would need her family's approval to continue adventuring. Narcina revealed that her father hadn't approved of her decision, and if she went back, she might not be allowed to return. Ralma reassured her that her father wasn't against her being an adventurer. He simply wanted to ensure her safety and had asked Ralma to intervene only if Narcina was in grave danger. She promised to convince him otherwise, which made Narcina smile in relief. Afterwards, Lost went to get drinks, and Ralma took the opportunity to speak privately with Narcina. She hinted that Narcina might be afraid her big brother wouldn't want her by his side, yet Narcina had deep respect for him. She admired his skill as a healer, combat knowledge, and the way he prioritized others' well-being. Narcina believed he wanted her to gain experience to keep her safe, even after he might leave one day. Ralma then assured her that Lost had changed for the better and had become a respectable man, all thanks to her influence. Outside the restaurant, Lost and Narcina discussed their plans, and Ralma thought to herself that it was time for her to fulfill her duty. She wondered about Mr. Mist's intentions for Lost. The next day, Shalia asked Lost if the Phoenix birds were as strong as they seemed. Lost confirmed that they were formidable, but Narcina interrupted confidently, saying she would be there to protect him. Shalia, laughing, said that only made her worry more, and the group laughed as they bid farewell, bringing the anime episode to a close. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the channel and activate the bell icon to stay updated. The group steps into the dungeon and immediately feels the strange energy surging through the air as they teleport inside. Narsena's sharp eyes scan their surroundings, taking in the narrow corridors that stretch out before them. She voices her surprise that the Phoenix is not there to confront them. Lost laughs softly, explaining that a creature as large as the Phoenix would find it impossible to navigate such confined spaces. Sig adds that creatures like the Phoenix prefer wide open areas with high ceilings. These spaces allow them to move freely and monitor their territory from above. After traveling for a while, the cramped corridors give way to an enormous chamber. Towering ceilings loom overhead, and the open space stretches out like a giant arena. Armia's gaze sweeps the room, and she remarks that this matches the description they had been given. Laurimad's lair nods in agreement, certain the Phoenix is nearby. He mentions a newly discovered passage within this area that remains unexplored. He speculates that it could hold rare treasures and valuable items, though Sig quickly warns them of a dangerous creature guarding the passage. It has kept even the most skilled adventurers from venturing further, and the guild has placed a bounty on its defeat. As they move forward, Lost notices scorch marks on one of the pillars. Sig takes this as a clear sign they are nearing the Phoenix's nest. To confirm their suspicions, one of the healers tosses a stone into a dark corridor. Phoenixes are known to be highly territorial, and any intrusion usually provokes an immediate response. True to their expectations, a portal suddenly bursts open above them, and a massive fireball erupts, announcing the Phoenix's fiery presence. The majestic bird perches high above, its piercing gaze fixed on the group as it prepares to attack. Meanwhile, back in Mardant, Amarist lounges inside the guild, bored by the slow pace of her day. Her mood brightens when Ralma arrives, and she greets the fire goddess enthusiastically. Amarist is quick to note Ralma's refined appearance and magical accessories, which suggest she is both powerful and influential. When Ralma requests a meeting with the guild president, Amarist hesitates, sensing trouble. However, when Ralma conjures a blazing fireball as a warning, Amarist quickly backs down. Back in the dungeon, the Phoenix proves to be a relentless opponent, raining fiery attacks upon the group. Lot suggests targeting it with a bow, but before they can act, the bird unleashes a powerful stream of flame. Narsena narrowly avoids the attack, thanks to the healer's quick thinking and intervention. The group realizes they must act swiftly. Sig devises a strategy, urging Armia to use her water magic to weaken the Phoenix's fiery wings. This, he explains, will not bring the bird down completely, but will force it closer, making it vulnerable to their melee attacks. Sig promises to protect Armia while she casts the spell, and the group bands together to draw the Phoenix's attention and shield her. Anmaya steels herself, pushing past her fear. She casts a concentrated water spell, firing an arrow-like stream of water at the Phoenix. The attack strikes its wing, causing the flames to sputter. The bird falters, descending low enough for Sig to land a well-placed sword strike. Though not a fatal blow, the attack weakens the Phoenix significantly. The group braces themselves as the battle intensifies, determined to see it through to the end. Meanwhile, in the dungeon, Narsena lands her first attack on the Phoenix, but it doesn't go as planned. Instead of harming the creature, the flames on its body catch her hand, leaving her vulnerable. The Phoenix retaliates, swooping down with razor-sharp claws. Lost steps in to block the attack, but the intense heat radiating from the Phoenix nearly melts his sword. While Lara heals Armia, the mage struggles to conjure a new spell in such a short time. She knows the situation demands it. Finally, Armia summons a powerful ice arrow and fires it at the Phoenix. The arrow strikes the bird's right wing, causing it to falter and lose altitude, though it still manages to stay out of Sig's reach. The Phoenix soars past Zig and dives toward the rest of the group. Narsena seizes the moment, using her agility to leap between the dungeon's towering columns. She gains enough height to deliver a powerful kick to the Phoenix's skull, sending it crashing to the ground. Waste doesn't waste the opportunity and drives his dagger into the beast's head, delivering the final blow. With the Phoenix defeated, the group celebrates their hard-earned victory. They commend Armia for her bravery and magic. Even as tears of relief stream down her face, she holds up the Phoenix's magic stone triumphantly. Alone, Steve and Lyra whisper about their disappointment that Lost didn't transform during the battle. They were hoping to study his mysterious ability. When the group returns to Mardat, they find Ralma at Mary's tavern. After bribing Amherst earlier, the fire goddess already knows about their Phoenix hunt. She teases Lost about winning the prize money and the bounty, suggesting he should treat her to a meal. Lost suspects she's more interested in drinks than food, especially as she downs another round despite her low tolerance for alcohol. As the group gathers for a meal, Narcena savors the food, while Ralma complains that the meat is too tough. Sheila, unimpressed, slams Ralma's drink onto the table, which only amuses the goddess further. Ralma then casually mentions that Narcena must enjoy the adventure because she never had such freedom back at the mansion. This catches Armia's attention, and she asks what mansion Ralma is referring to. Ralma reveals that Narcena is the heir to the Count of Annalestoria. The group is stunned by the revelation. Lost, however, starts piecing together memories and realizes that the little girl he saved years ago was none other than Narcena. Elsewhere, Handsome informs Mist about the latest monster mutation and Ralma's presence in the city. Mist replies that it's almost time to put his apprentice Ralma to work, hinting at a plan that has yet to unfold. At the Adventurers Guild, Lost and Narcenia were taken aback when the clerk handed them what seemed to be a small reward for their efforts. Narcenia couldn't hide her frustration and immediately questioned the clerk. She reminded him that they had delivered a magic stone from a phoenix, a rare and powerful creature that had mutated into an even more dangerous fire beast. She pointed out that the guild had made them wait, saying the payment required extra time to prepare. To receive such a small amount felt insulting. The clerk, Amarist, remained calm and suggested Narcenia check the bag before jumping to conclusions. Hesitantly, Narcenia opened it and gasped in surprise. The bag was filled with pure gold coins. Amarist explained that gold was used instead of silver or copper because it was lighter and easier to carry in large amounts. Lost, equally shocked, quickly warned Narcenia not to flaunt the gold in public. He handed a portion of the coins back to Amarist, who cheerfully accepted, proud to handle such responsibilities. As they left the guild, Narcenia noticed Lois walking away and asked Amarist if something was wrong between him and the others. Amarist brushed off the question, and the story shifted to a man in the city entertaining children with tales of a fearsome dragon hidden deep within a labyrinth. The dragon, he said, was a greedy creature that sought to claim everything in the world. Every 200 years, a hero was destined to face it. The children cheered, captivated by the idea of a brave warrior defeating such evil. Meanwhile, Lost sat alone, deep in thought. Narcenia approached him with food and brought up the idea of using their earnings to rent a home. Her suggestion caught Lost off guard, and she explained that she had been considering it for a while. Renting or even buying a home would be more practical and cost-effective than staying in noisy inns. She admitted she longed for a quiet, private place where they could relax. Narcenia imagined a peaceful home with warm drinks by the fire, a place where she could learn from Lost's experience as an adventurer. However, Lost gently reminded her that their funds were better saved for future needs. He mentioned Zeke's suggestion of forming an official party with their temporary team to take on more challenging labyrinths. Though Narcenia hesitated, she agreed as long as she could stay by Lost's side. That evening, the group celebrated their new party with food and laughter. As the night wound down, Wira offered to help Armia to her room, leaving Zeke and Lost to talk. During their conversation, Zeke teasingly suggested that Lost and Narcenia should get married. Lost, caught off guard, denied having romantic feelings for her, but admitted that Narcinia had inspired him during one of his darkest moments. Zeke pressed on, claiming that Lost's care for Narcinia was obvious. Elsewhere, Narcinia confided in Lyra, sharing her concerns about Lost's rejection of her idea to live together. Lyra reassured her, explaining that Lost might simply need time to sort out his emotions. An adventurer in disguise, as a waitress walks into the room and takes drink orders from the group. After handing out the menus, she tells Lost that she has the information he requested. Zeke, curious, asks if guild members in this town try to act special, but the waitress explains that she's acting on her own and not as part of the guild. If it were a guild matter, she wouldn't be here at this time. The waitress begins to explain what she found out about Narcina. She reveals that Narcina is the only daughter of Ul and Countess Anna Listoria. Normally, she would inherit the family title with her husband, but instead, she decided she wanted to become an adventurer. Zeke thinks that's fine, as there are noble adventurers, but the waitress notes that most parents wouldn't want their daughters to follow such a path. Lost quickly realizes that Narcina's father, Earl Anna Listoria, must have opposed her decision. The waitress confirms this, but then something unexpected happened that changed everything. The scene shifts to Narcina and her friends. She reveals that she wasn't born with blue hair. When she was a child, her hair was blonde like her parents. One day she woke up to find it had turned blue. Lyra, her friend, is surprised, saying she's never heard of hair changing color overnight. Back with Lost, he admits he didn't recognize Narcina at first because of her changed hair. He still can't believe it happened so suddenly. Narcina explains that the cause is unknown, but after that, her father stopped opposing her adventurer dream. The Earl accepted it because he didn't expect her to live long and wanted her to pursue what she loved. Despite her strength, including the ability to defeat a phoenix, her parents thought her life was short, so they finally gave their blessing. Lost says he wants to trust Narcina, but he's not convinced yet. He tells her that if her father hadn't agreed, he would have sent her back and told her to convince him first. He would help, but only if her parents supported her. Narcina looks sad. Meanwhile, Lyra reflects on Narcina's journey and decides she should be more direct in her own pursuit. She approaches Zeke and asks if he would consider being more than just an adventure partner, asking him to be her life partner. Zeke, surprised, says he'll think about it. Lyra insists that he take her feelings seriously. Zeke reassures her, though she still wishes he would consider it more seriously. Lost overhears their conversation and later approaches Narcina, asking if they can talk tomorrow. The scene shifts to a man telling a story to children about a sleeping princess who sacrificed herself to bring peace to the world, believing a hero would rise to save them. The episode ends with a reminder to stay tuned for more and a call to subscribe for updates. A group of adventurers finds themselves in trouble when they encounter a half-orc in the dungeon. The creature shouldn't be on that level, and to avoid a fight, they stay quiet until it passes and head toward the exit. However, another half-orc blocks their way, trapping them. One member nervously asks what they should do, and the leader coldly replies that this is why they hired the new recruit. Without hesitation, he grabs Keith, the young recruit, and throws him toward the monsters as bait, allowing the rest of the team to escape. Meanwhile, back at Mary's inn, Narcina is distractedly poking at her food. Armia tries to get her attention, and after some effort, the fighter snaps out of her daze. Armia and the others realize Narcina is anxious because Lost said he needed to talk to her about something important. Lyra guesses Narcina is nervous, unsure of what Lost will say or when. Sig suggests Lost resolve the matter quickly, but he seems just as overwhelmed, though not as much as Narcina, who casually holds a flower, unaware it's not food. Lara and Sig urge Lost to act before Narcina does something even stranger. Finally, Lost stands up to speak, but before he can, Keith stumbles into the inn, badly injured. Sheila rushes to help him, and Narcina looks on with concern. Lost reassures them that Keith's injuries aren't as serious as they seem, and that Sheila and Lyra will take care of him. While it's clear Lyra is the healer, Narcina is confused about Sheila's role. Mary explains that Sheila and Keith have been close friends since childhood. She also reveals that Keith, like her daughter, is a labyrinth orphan. Mary took care of him when he was younger, providing food and shelter. As he grew older, Keith became an adventurer and was thrilled to join a team. Lost apologizes to Mersina for postponing their conversation and says they need to go to the Adventurers Guild immediately. When they arrive, they find Keith's former team tied up after confessing to their crime. Marnell, who helped capture them, informs Lost he can decide their punishment. Lost orders that they not be mistreated but must leave the city. Marnell delivers the message, warning them never to return to Mardat or face severe consequences. The team flees, vowing never to come back. Amherst arrives during the commotion and scolds the adventurers for acting without guild approval. One adventurer argues that the guild failed to handle the issue, forcing them to act. Amherst defends herself, stating that she doesn't make the rules. Frustrated, Lost questions how the guild allows such chaos, and at that moment, Handsome, a high-ranking guild officer, intervenes. Handsome accuses Lost of overstepping by punishing adventurers without proper authority, which could lead to expulsion. Some of Lost's team argue back, but Lost calms them and agrees to discuss the matter privately. In Handsome's office, Lost explains the deeper issue labyrinth orphans, like Keith, are often exploited in dangerous situations. He points out that other cities have plans to protect such orphans, unlike Mardat. Handsome replies that the guild has limited resources and can't solve every problem. Lost grows angry, accusing the guild of using orphans as bait. Handsome denies this, reminding Lost that becoming an adventurer is a choice and no one is forced into it. Handsome recalls a harsh truth he once heard adventurers live alongside danger. The weak will die. That's the way of the world. He then reveals a mark on his arm, identifying himself as Nogzim. In a flashback, Nogzim recalls being mistreated by his former team, forced to carry their burdens and threatened with no reward unless he complied. Despite this, Lost treated him with kindness and respect. Once, Lost offered to help Nogzim, but Nogzim snapped, saying he wasn't weak enough to need pity. That night, Nogzim grumbled about Lost's attitude, feeling scorned by the healer's compassion. Later, while the group rested after extinguishing their campfire, Lost quietly warned Nogzim about an approaching goblin horde. The pair woke the team, but the goblins were too numerous to fight. Desperate, the team decided to use Nogzim and Lost as bait, pushing them off a cliff to save themselves. Nogzim looked up, hoping his teammates might reconsider and help, but he quickly realized they wouldn't. He suspected they'd been hired for this purpose all along as expendable bait. Despite his anger, he believed survival was still possible if they worked together. Resolutely, Lost and Nogzim hid near the cliff, avoiding detection even though goblins surrounded the area. Nogzim joked that they'd at least made good bait. Lost countered, saying they hadn't, because goblins often target larger groups. Sure enough, the goblins eventually left to pursue the rest of the team. Nogzim quipped that the others had served as bait for them to escape, but Lost regretted being unable to save them, which angered Nogzim. He argued the group deserved their fate for their betrayal. Lost reminded him they needed to leave quickly, but Nogzim revealed a deep gash on his arm. Lost immediately used a healing spell, but Nogzim hesitated, fearing the goblins might return. As Lost worked, Nogzim reflected on the harsh reality of adventuring, recalling a grim truth: adventurers live hand in hand with danger. The incompetent don't have the right to live. Lost, however, disagreed, believing the world, while harsh, still allowed hope and salvation. After escaping the goblin horde, the two returned to town and parted ways. Nogzim endured many hardships after that, but eventually mistook him in. Nogzim became a respected guild officer, now known as Handsome. Sharing this story with Lost, Handsome explained his debt to Lost for showing him kindness and hope. However, he urged Lost to leave the city for his safety, advising him to take Mersina along. Handsome saw this as the best way to repay his debt and ensure their survival. Frustrated, Lost questioned why things had to end this way. After a tense conversation, Amherst summoned Lost and Marnell, revealing internal opposition to Handsome's leadership. Even Miss, the guild master, clashed with him at times. Amherst asked for their help in managing the situation, emphasizing the increasing monster attacks threatening the city. Meanwhile, Sieg trained young adventurers, including Keith, who showed remarkable recovery and determination after his ordeal. Lost watched with pride as Keith demonstrated his potential. Lara noted that Keith's resilience and drive proved he was meant to be an adventurer. Later, Mersina helped teach combat moves to the trainees. Lara nudged Lost, asking if he'd spoken to Mersina about his feelings, but Lost avoided the topic. In another part of the city, Mist received a letter from the royal capital. The Prime Minister warned that they must protect the girl from Annalestoria. Mist explained to Handsome that this girl, Mersina, bore a sacred mark linked to an ancient legend. The story spoke of a sleeping princess who sacrificed herself to defeat an evil dragon. Mersina's blue hair signified she was chosen by the gods, making her the only one capable of subduing the dragon if it ever returned. The next day, Sieg spots monsters approaching, just as Amherst had warned. Assuming their target is the city, Lara comes up with a plan to ambush them. Armia suggests using magic for a ranged attack, but Lost insists on confronting the monsters directly. He refuses to risk even one escaping and threatening the city's safety. Sieg proposes flanking the monsters by circling around a hill, and the group agrees to the strategy. As they move, Narcena and Lost pass the overturned carriage where they first met. The memory lingers briefly, but they focus on their mission. Soon, they close in on the creatures and strike. Narcena lands the first blow, remembering how helpless she once felt. Now, she fights with strength and purpose. Lost follows, striking another monster, reflecting on how far he's come since those desperate early days. Together, they work seamlessly, a powerful team. At one point, Lost warns Narcena of an enemy sneaking up, giving her just enough time to react. Their teamwork shines, and the group wins the battle decisively. As they catch their breath, the ground suddenly shakes violently. The healer shouts for everyone to brace themselves. It's only going to get worse. The entire city of Mardat feels the tremor, throwing its people into panic. Mist watches the chaos unfold, wondering if the real trouble is just beginning. After the quake subsides, Mary and Sheila clean their tavern, sweeping up broken dishes. Lost arrives, concerned, but the tavern owner assures him that nothing serious has happened. Just then, one of Marnell's soldiers rushes in, asking Lost to come to the town square. There, Marnell reveals more monsters, goblins and hobgoblins, surrounding the city. He plans to fight them but worries about their overwhelming numbers. Worse, he didn't notify the guild, so reinforcements are limited, and rewards for volunteers will be scarce. Despite this, Lost agrees to help, driven by a sense of duty. Arsena reminds the group of the help they've received from the townsfolk and says it's time to repay the kindness. With this resolve, Mardat's defenders, joined by a few adventurers, head out to face the goblins. Narcena, Armia, and Zig lead the charge, cutting through the first wave. Lost battles a hobgoblin, severing its arm. The creature, still alive, lets out a terrifying cry, vowing revenge. Its defiance fuels the goblins, who echo its words in a chilling display of human speech. The defenders, shocked but determined, press on. Lost reminds everyone of their mission to stop the monsters at all costs. Even as the hobgoblin dies, it declares that humanity is doomed and no one will survive. With those final words, the creature dissolves into nothingness. Lost picks up a strange, mutated magic stone left behind by the creature, a grim clue to something far more sinister. Before they can process this, a guard rushes in with alarming news. The situation isn't over. At the dungeon entrance, the group sees an overwhelming number of monsters, far more than they can handle. They retreat to the city to regroup, heading first to the guild for reinforcements. When they arrive, they find chaos. Adventurers crowd the guild headquarters, clamoring for jobs. The guild is offering an enormous reward for defeating the monsters emerging from the labyrinth, more money than was ever offered for even the most dangerous missions. However, Ambrose points out a flaw. The guild is paying up front, and many adventurers are taking the money without completing the jobs. Frustrated, she blames Handsome for implementing this policy. Marnell admits things are worse than expected, but hopes to recruit honest adventurers for the city's defense. Meanwhile, Seed wonders if Handsome's policies are deliberate sabotage. Lost notes that paying up front requires a massive reserve of funds, adding to the mystery. To everyone's surprise, Ralma appears in Mardad. She warns that this chaos was inevitable. It's the labyrinth's fury. Amherst leads the group to a book explaining this phenomenon. The labyrinth's fury occurs when a dungeon's magical energy builds up, releasing endless waves of monsters. While most events last a single day, some drag on, surrounding nearby cities with monsters until they are destroyed. The book outlines two solutions: eliminate all the monsters, or wait for the dungeon to release all the stored energy. Amherst explains that adventurer guilds were originally created to prevent such events by reducing magical buildup in Labyrinth. Lyra, shocked, questions how such a fundamental fact could be forgotten. Angered, a guild worker admits it was barely mentioned during training, and she had never seen a Labyrinth's fury before. Now, the group faces an unprecedented challenge, with the fate of Mardad hanging in the balance. Roland explains that the Labyrinth's fury hasn't been seen in nearly 100 years. Lost finds it odd that it's happening in Mardad, a city brimming with hunters who constantly clear the local labyrinth of monsters. This problem shouldn't exist here. The fire goddess admits she doesn't know why it's happening either, but insists they must focus on stopping it. Taking charge of Mardad's defense, Lost leads the residents in creating barricades from their furniture to slow the enemy's advance. Despite the many adventurers in the city, some left after pocketing their upfront payment, leaving too few to hold off the threat. Young warrior trainees determined to protect their land don armor for the battle. Marnell keeps their spirits high while assigning them as scouts and messengers, explaining that fighting monsters isn't just about swinging a sword. Understanding their roles, the youths prepare for the grueling conflict. Watching them, Marnell reminisces about his own days as a recruit, but feels a pang of guilt knowing this battle might strip away their innocence, or worse, their lives. Another goblin horde attacks, and adventurers eager for rewards dive into battle with fierce determination. Furniture-laden carts block some entrances, but stronger monsters appear, threatening to shatter the barricades. Lost grows anxious as the situation escalates, while Ralma calmly remarks that the monsters arrived sooner than expected. She notices Lost's emotions showing on his face and advises him to let go of self-blame. Everyone is facing this for the first time, and all they can do is fight with everything they have. The battle intensifies as liches, bizarrely immune to sunlight, join the fray. The goblins, still speaking human language, shout chilling death threats. The fire goddess steps in, unleashing her power, and Lost team fights fiercely to subdue this wave of enemies. Just when it seems over, yet another group charges into the city. Exhausted, Marnell grumbles that the onslaught never ends, while Narcena asks Ralma for magical cover. The mage, worn out, refuses, choosing to rest instead. Sieg and Waste continue the fight, while Lyra tends to the wounded. Despite being outnumbered, Sieg and Waste's skill keeps them in the battle, until Sieg stumbles over a fallen club. A monster lunges to strike, but a voice rings out, critiquing Sieg's lack of training. A mysterious figure appears on the battlefield, cutting through monsters effortlessly. This night, Ronaldo steps out of the shadows, revealing himself as Marcena's former master. She recalls training under him in swordsmanship, though he teases her for being better with her hands than a blade. He also mentions training Lost, who looks embarrassed as Sieg shoots him a puzzled glance. Ronaldo humorously calls Ralma a fire demon before diving back into the fight, showcasing his incredible skill. Ralma confirms his reputation as an unmatched swordsman and shares that they've adventured together many times. Their banter is interrupted when Enhanzim arrives through a portal, informing Ralma that Mist wishes to speak with her. Ralma asks to join, eager to confront the branch president, and Ralma insists Narcena accompany them, though she doesn't explain why. Without warning, Ralma hurls a fireball at Mist upon arrival. As the smoke clears, Mist emerges unscathed, revealing pointed ears. The sorceress declares him to be one of the last elves cursed by the gods. Mist, unfazed, responds dryly, "This is no way for a student to greet her master." Ralma, as blunt as ever, pointing out that Mist is probably the last elf not blessed by the gods. Mist, not one to let that slide, responds, "That's no way to talk to your master." Ralma doesn't back down and explains her reasoning. Everyone knows elves are naturally better at magic than humans. Mist, being a 600-year-old elf who has mastered all sorts of spells, is practically a walking spellbook. She admits she could never compare to him. As the conversation flows, Mist does something unexpectedly shy. It's so subtle that everyone misses it, except Marcina. She spots something and looks shocked. But when Lost asks what happened, she refuses to spill the beans. "Come on, Marcina. Don't leave us hanging." Ralma shifts gears and asks Mist why he's meeting his old pupil after so many years. She assumes he's there to scold her for being a lousy mentor. Mist looks genuinely hurt. How could she think so poorly of him? He explains that ever since Handsome became his apprentice, things have been more respectful. That's not to say Handsome is good at magic. He's not. But Handsome steps in and boldly states that he's learned plenty from Mist, despite not receiving proper guidance in sorcery. He believes he's ready to be a great apprentice now. Mist takes this opportunity to showcase Handsome as a modeled disciple. Ralma is unimpressed and not about to take a free lecture. Mist conjures a magical table, inviting everyone to sit down for a proper discussion. As the talk deepens, Ralma brings up something the old master had said. Mist admits to luring shady adventurers into the city during the invasion. His goal, to keep trouble contained and protect the citizens and decent adventurers by encouraging them to leave. This, to Ralma, proves Mist knew the attack was coming. Mist confirms her suspicion, asking if no one else noticed the warning signs. Lost mentions several, powerful monsters on the upper dungeon floors, mana mutations, and more. Marcina and the healer question why Mist didn't warn anyone if he was so sure. Lives could have been saved, and the army could have been prepared. Mist explains that he didn't know the exact timing. It could have been days, months, or even years. Any warning might have caused unnecessary panic. Still, Lost accuses him and his superior of keeping secrets and trying to save only their group. At this point, Mist reveals that his silence wasn't his choice. The higher-ups, powerful figures controlling the adventurer guilds, ordered him to keep quiet. Handsome, understandably worried, listens as Mist confesses he's done hiding the truth. Ralma elaborates on the monster stampede. It lasts for days and destroys everything in its path but disappears when its magical energy runs out. She adds that the royal city won't be affected, which is why the rulers decided to stay quiet to avoid nationwide chaos. However, Mist took precautions. Ralma asks if anyone has noticed the large white pillars surrounding Mardat. She believes these are Mardat's final defense, created by Mist himself. Mist proposes a plan. Ralma, being immensely powerful, will lead the defense. Meanwhile, Mist and Handsome will venture into the dungeon's lowest floor to find and defeat the Labyrinth Master, the source of the stampede. This could cut off the flow of mana feeding the monsters. Lost and Marcina are shocked. They believed the Labyrinth Master was a myth. Handsome reassures them they've pinpointed where it might be. The mission is dangerous, but Ralma agrees. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, Ronaldo slashes through enemies like a boss. Lyra, impressed, teases Sieg, asking why he can't be that amazing. Sieg, struggling with a single goblin, grumbles, "Can we not do this right now?" Things escalate as a massive half-orc enters the fray, lifting two humans like they're stuffed toys. Ronaldo announces grimly that there are more half-orcs. Sieg, worried about the young recruits at the barrier, charges in with Ronaldo to take on the beasts. Back at Mardat, Ralma activates a portal using a magical mechanism in a garden gazebo. Before stepping through, she warns Lost not to trust Mist too much. Her farewell feels strange, almost as if she doesn't expect to return. As soon as Ralma enters, a beam of light shoots into the sky, forming a shield around Mardad. The monsters slam into it but can't break through. Just then, Lost discovers something incredible about Marinette. She's basically a human fortress. Not just any fortress, though. Her barrier is the ultimate combo. Allies can pass freely, but enemies? Blocked like bad Wi-Fi. Thanks to this, the adventurers fighting on the outskirts can now focus on enemies still inside the city. Pretty slick strategy, right? Meanwhile, Ronaldo advises Seed to take a breather, but not before throwing some shade about his sword skills. Classic Ronaldo. While scouting, he notices how the adventurers seem better coordinated. Clearly, Marinette's barrier is doing its job, but Ronaldo doesn't fully grasp its toll yet. Cue the big reveal. Loss and Arsena arrive with grim news. Marinette's shield, powered by the fire goddess, is a massive mana drain. If Marinette runs out of energy, the mechanism continues to pull power, risking her life. Gotta love those overachieving magical gadgets. As everyone processes this, a huge griffin appears. It can't breach the barrier, but its attacks are so powerful that cracks are starting to form. Ronaldo warns that keeping the shield intact will drain even more energy from Marinette. Lost realizes the stakes are higher than ever. The griffin's not the only problem, though. A femur, a legendary wolf known as the fastest and most dangerous terrestrial beast, shows up. It teams up with the griffin, making for an airborne and ground nightmare duo. Sieg tries to act brave, but his shaking hands give him away. Lyra calls him out, and honestly, it's hilarious. Ronaldo takes charge, assigning Lost's group to handle the wolf while he tackles the griffin. The battle kicks off with intensity. Lost gets a solid hit on Ephema, but is injured in the process. Lyra scrambles to heal him, while Ronaldo pulls off an epic leap to bring the griffin down. Just as it seems they're making progress, a lich drops in from the sky and attacks Armia. The fight grows chaotic. Maricina defeats the lich, but the wolf seriously wounds Narcena, who, despite her injuries, charges back into battle like a total badass. Her fierce attacks injure the wolf, but also provoke its wrath. It retaliates, leaving her on the ground, wounded and cornered. But guess what? Lost makes a dramatic comeback. Just when it looks like a femur's about to win, Lost strikes with his dagger, ending the fight. Turns out, he was healing in secret the whole time and had asked Narcena to buy him time. What a twist! Narcena faints after her heroic stand but wakes up later, relieved to see everyone alive. Ronaldo even shows off a magical stone from the defeated griffin as proof of their victory. But the battle isn't over. There's still the Labyrinth Master to deal with. As the group heads back to regroup, Narcena, still sore from the fight, jokes about how rough they all look. Hansim, ever the wild card, flips her with a surprise jujitsu move and carries her through a portal. Yep, you read that right. Marnell and his crew finally clean up the last monsters terrorizing the town. With the barrier in place, things seem secure. For now. The townsfolk, led by a kid named Keith, bring food for the adventurers and tell them to take a break. Marnell appreciates the gesture, but can't relax. He's too worried about his comrades, especially Lofts. Sheila reassures him that Lofts is safe and back at the inn resting. Relieved, Marnell asks if everyone made it out okay, but Sheila delivers the bad news. While most of the group returned, Narcena didn't make it back. At the inn, the team tries to figure out why Hansim kidnapped Narcena. Ronaldo believes it's because Narcena is the legendary sleeping princess. Armia rolls her eyes, thinking it's just a fairy tale. But Ronaldo explains that while the story might have been exaggerated, it's based on truth. The legend says the sleeping princess has the power to put an evil dragon to sleep, but only by sacrificing herself. Hansim likely kidnapped Narcena to feed her to the dragon. End of Part 1, Section 4. Meanwhile, Hansim returns to his boss, Mist Saroon, dragging Narcena along. Mist praises Hansim for a job well done, but Narcena isn't about to take this lying down. She lunges at Mist, only for him to stop her mid-air using what might as well be Jedi mind tricks. He pins her to the ground like it's nothing. Narcena, furious but helpless, demands to know what Mist plans to do with her. Instead of answering, Mist shifts gears, asking if she's heard of the evil dragon. Narcina snaps back that everyone knows about it. But Mist isn't joking. He releases her and tells her to explain what she knows. Narcina recounts the common tale. 200 years ago, a hero defeated the dragon, saving the world. Mist smirks and says she's mostly right, but missing some key details. The hero didn't kill the dragon. He only sent it back to where it came from. Oh, and this isn't a one-time thing. The dragon shows up like clockwork every 200 years. It's been 200, 400, 600, and even 800 years since its first appearance. Each time, a hero emerged to stop it, but this time, no hero has shown up yet. Mist delivers the kicker. While there's no hero, there is someone who can put the dragon to sleep. Narcina herself. Her blue hair is proof enough that she's the chosen sleeping princess, destined to sacrifice herself to save the world. Narcina asks if her father knew about all this. It's hard to believe someone as powerful as him wouldn't know something so crucial. Maybe that's why he allowed her to become an adventurer in the first place. Back at the inn, Lofts asks Ronaldo if Mist plans to use Narcina to put the dragon to sleep. Ronaldo doubts it's Mist's decision. It's probably coming from his boss, the Chancellor of the Adventurers Guild. And that man only cares about minimizing the dragon's damage, no matter the cost. Armia doesn't think that sounds too bad, but Ronaldo points out the Chancellor's approach. If sacrificing 40 people saves 60, he won't hesitate. In fact, the city of Marmot doesn't even have walls because the Chancellor refused to approve them. When the dragon's return gets closer, labyrinth stampedes are inevitable. The Chancellor knew this and planned to let Marmot fall to make a point. He believes that if Marmot were destroyed, it would scare everyone, from commoners to the king, and he'd get full authority to deal with the dragon. Narcina is horrified that the Chancellor would sacrifice so many innocent lives, but he thinks it's the only way to save the world. The guild has known for decades that the dragon would show up in Marmot's labyrinth. They predicted it by analyzing the mana and activity in the labyrinth. But Ronaldo explains that they never warned the townspeople, because the Chancellor wanted to let Marmot be destroyed. Mist, however, wasn't okay with that plan. He secretly constructed the barrier around Marmot without the Chancellor knowing. Still, if the stampede doesn't end soon, the barrier might fail and Marmot will be overrun. Mist is likely trying to defeat the labyrinth boss as fast as possible, and to ensure he has a backup plan, he had Handsome kidnap Narcina to stop the dragon if his plan fails. Ronaldo admits they can't be sure about Mist's intentions without confronting him, but they figure he must be heading to the deepest part of the labyrinth to fight the boss. Since the labyrinth is unexplored and dangerous, the group decides to rescue Narcina no matter what. Meanwhile, Mist, Hansim, and Narcina teleport to the labyrinth's deepest floor. It's an open, eerie space with high-level monsters like Cyclopes roaming around. Mist explains they're near the temple where the labyrinth boss resides. Narcina is shocked to learn this place was discovered long ago, but Mist intentionally kept it a secret. At the same time, Lofts and his friends enter the labyrinth, noticing the lack of monsters. Most were pushed out by the stampede, but new ones will spawn soon, so they need to hurry. When Lofts spots Narcina, he shouts her name, drawing the attention of a Cyclops. It charges, but Lofts easily outmaneuvers it, slicing off its arm before finishing it off, his glowing red eyes making him look terrifyingly powerful. After killing the Cyclopes, Lofts returns to normal and reassures his friends. He confronts Mist, expecting a fight, but Mist surprises him by happily handing Narcina over. Mist explains he disagrees with the Chancellor's methods and wants to minimize casualties. Ronaldo and Armia don't trust him, pointing out his willingness to sacrifice Narcina and others. But Mist argues no one has died yet, and if they defeat the labyrinth boss in time, no one will have to. Mist insists Lofts must defeat the boss himself. Mist will help, but he believes humans should save their own world. Mist, an elf, doesn't have much time left, so the group can't rely on him for long. With no other choice, they agree to fight the boss. As they head toward the temple, Lara asks Lofts if they can trust Mist. Lofts admits he doesn't fully trust him, but if Mist is telling the truth, defeating the boss could save everyone. They steel themselves for the battle ahead, knowing the fate of Marmot, and possibly the world, rests on their shoulders. Once the gang reaches the boss temple, Mist gives them a quick rundown on what's going on. Turns out, when the hero beats the dragon, it doesn't die. It just gets sent to nap in another realm. The only way to wake it up is with a ridiculous amount of magic, which is gathered by the monsters running wild in the labyrinth. The labyrinth boss is like a delivery guy, taking that magic to the dragon to wake it up. So, if they take down the labyrinth boss, they'll stop the stampede and delay the dragon's awakening. But here's the catch. Even if they stop it this time, the dragon can just try again with another labyrinth. Still, beating the boss will buy them some time to figure out a better plan. Mist steps up to the temple gate, slams his staff on the ground, and calls out the labyrinth boss, a siren. When it appears, Mist tells everyone to hit it with everything they've got. Armia uses a spell to pin it down, while Ronaldo and Chancellor team up to slice off its wings in midair. So far, so good. But the siren isn't going down without a fight. It fires a barrage of magic blasts at the group, but Narcina leaps in and smashes its face with a punch so hard it cracks. The siren tries to flee, but Lofts cuts it off and slices it clean in half, officially taking it down. Victory, right? Not so fast. Out of nowhere, Hansem gets skewered by dark tendrils, and a deep voice echoes through the portal. It's the evil dragon, already gathering enough magic to partially manifest. The dragon recognizes Mist, calling him out for meddling yet again. Furious, it demands Mist surrender his body, threatening to kill Hansem if he refuses. Mist knows giving up his body would spell doom for the world, but he hesitates, and that tiny hesitation costs him everything. The dragon forcibly takes over Mist's body, using him as a vessel to power the portal and transfer its full strength. Unfortunately for the dragon, there's not enough magic left in the labyrinth to complete the process, so it teleports away to find a better power source. With the dragon gone, Hansem collapses, and Lofts rushes to heal him. But Hansem, bleeding out with a gaping hole in his chest, tells Lofts to forget about him and go stop the dragon before it destroys everything. For some reason, they travel a few miles away from the labyrinth and are forced to crawl underneath its scantily clad sides. Meanwhile, the dragon reappears on the outskirts of the city and starts hammering away at the barrier with insanely powerful magic. The barrier won't hold much longer, and things are looking grim. Ralma can feel the evil dragon inside Mist, but she's too powerless to do anything about it. All she can do is hope Lost can save her. Right now, her shield is still holding strong, but the fear from the people around them is literally feeding the dragon, making it stronger by the second. As more and more fear builds up, the ground starts rumbling. It's the second wave of the stampede, and things are looking bad. Inside the barrier, Marno tries to keep the kids calm, telling them the barrier will protect them from the monsters outside. But even he knows it won't hold forever with all the monsters banging on it. Meanwhile, Ronaldo is pacing outside, worried about Ralma because all the monsters attacking the barrier could tear it down and put her life at risk. But over here, things aren't any better. Lost has been trying to heal Hanzo, but the stab wound he got was from dark mana, so Lost's usual healing magic isn't cutting it. Hanzo wakes up, and even though he's in pain, he tells Lost to go save Mist instead. Hanzo has a deep respect for Mist, not just as his boss, but as the one person who cared enough to teach him everything, even though he started out with no talent. Mist needed a human to run his guild so he could hide his identity as an elf. But over the years, Hanzo realized Mist truly cared about him. Now, Hanzo wishes Mist had let him die back then. Mist wished he had let no Egalitan like him die. It would have made his life have some meaning and saved everyone from this mess. Lost argues that Hanzo is wrong. He tells him his life isn't worthless because he cares about him and considers him a friend. Hanzo admits he feels the same, but he wishes he could have kept Lost out of all this trouble. Before they can talk more, Marcena yells at Hanzo, saying he doesn't deserve to call Lost a friend after keeping the stampede a secret. Lost tries to calm her, but Hanzo admits she's right and says he has no right to be a friend. He tells Lost to stop healing him because he deserves to die for what he's done. But Marcena says Hanzo can't just die without taking responsibility for his actions. Back in the town, Marnell has gathered all the adventurers and they're heading out to fight the monsters. Lost and the others are surprised to see them leaving the safety of the barrier, but they're trying to lighten Ralma's load, giving her a little more time to hold the shield. Mist's plan is going mostly as expected, except for the part where his body got hijacked by the dragon. They still need to figure out how to get the dragon out of Mist and save him. Before they head out, Ronaldo asks if anyone wants to leave. but they all know running is pointless. If the dragon revives, the entire world will be doomed, and there's nowhere to run. Everyone agrees to team up and take down the dragon, but Lost tells Narcena to stay behind. They start the battle by launching a fireball at the dragon, which gets its attention. The dragon is annoyed, but still doesn't take them seriously. After all, they can't fly to reach him in the air. But they don't need flight magic. They have explosions. Lofts gets on a rock, and Armia launches him into the sky with her spell. The dragon is impressed by how reckless Lofts is, charging at it like a human bullet. But it's not enough. Before Lofts can strike, the dragon stabs him through the chest, dropping him to the ground. Lofts starts to bleed out, and Narcena can't just stand there. So despite Lofts warning her to stay back, she jumps in to help. The others rush over to Lofts, and when they get there, they realize it's worse than they thought. Lara starts healing him, trying to save his life, but the dragon doesn't stop, continuing to attack the barrier. Ralma's shield is on the verge of breaking, and they don't have much time left. Ronaldo suggests evacuating the people from the city, but Narcena points out that it won't matter. If the dragon wakes up, it will destroy the entire world, and there's nowhere to run. So, Narcena decides to use her sleeping princess powers to stop the dragon, even though it means sacrificing herself. Ronaldo is worried, asking if she's sure. He reminds her that the sleeping power won't stop the dragon forever. It'll only put it to sleep for 10 years. But Marchena feels 10 years is enough time to come up with a plan to defeat the dragon. If she's not there, she trusts her friends to figure it out. She stands tall and announces that she's ready to face the dragon, telling it to come and devour her. The dragon knows who she is, and despite trying to resist, it's overcome by its desire. It slowly approaches her, about to strike. But just as the dragon is about to kill her, Lost regains consciousness. Every part of him refuses to let that happen, and he unleashes a mysterious power. Sieg and the others realize what's going on with Lofts, and Sieg orders a retreat to avoid getting caught in the chaos. The dragon is confused. No human should have this much power. But before it can figure it out, Lofts charges at the dragon, punching it relentlessly. It's great that Lofts is taking down the dragon, but if he keeps fighting like this, he might lose himself in the process. If that happens, the real Lofts will be gone forever. After a few more punches, Lofts grabs the dragon and raises his hand to finish it off. But before he does, Narcena steps in front of him, trying to stop him. When Lofts sees that she's okay, he snaps out of his rage and thanks her for being there. Meanwhile, the dragon, barely alive, tries to escape. In his weakened state, Mist manages to regain some control over his body and refuses to let the dragon escape. He holds it in place so Lost can finish the job. Himzum urges Lost to do it, but Lost hesitates, struggling to kill a good person like Mist. Mist reassures him, saying that after living so long, death doesn't scare him anymore. Lost finally raises his sword, agreeing to end it and get rid of the dragon. But Narcena, knowing how hard this will be for Lost, offers to help share the burden. Together, they walk towards the dragon, and with Mist holding it in place, they drive a dagger deep into Mist's chest. The evil dragon is expelled from his body, but the wound is fatal. The dragon thanks them all for their help, saying the dragon won't invade the world anymore since the mana flow has been cut off. The stampede will also end soon, and it's thanks to Lofts and Narcena. Once the stampede is over, Ronaldo shuts down the barrier and releases Ralma from the pod. She's relieved it didn't drain her dry before the danger passed. Later, the king gets the news and is pleased the dragon has been temporarily defeated and that Marmot is still standing. But he's not sure if Lost can replace the hero. Back at the guild, Hansim tells Amaris he wants her to take over as the new guild branch president, since Mist is dead. Normally, it would fall to Hansim, but he has other plans. Hansim hesitates, saying she's not a good leader, but after Hansim mentions the salary, she's all in. That night, they hold a big party to celebrate the defense of the city. Ronaldo chats with Lyra and Seed about Lost, saying he knows about Lost's mysterious power, and it's too much for Seed to handle. He suggests they let the Royal Capital Guild deal with it instead. Meanwhile, Lofts and Narcena are on the terrace, and Lofts admits that while they've stopped the dragon for now, it will return. That's why he plans to go on a journey to find the hero, and he asks Narcena to join him. Narcena happily agrees, just wanting to be with Lofts as his party member. The next morning, Lofts and Narcena set off on their journey, walking into the sunset. C and the others watch from a distance and Armia wonders if it's okay to let Lofts go, since they were supposed to be watching him. But Lyra and C agree it's their decision, and they'll meet again one day in some labyrinth. This was the final episode. Subscribe for more anime recaps.